Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to our World of Darkness, and we are back in Chapter 4, Core Rule Systems for Vampire the Masquerade, Laws of the Night. These are the Mind's Eye Theater rules, or LARP, Live Action Roleplay, and I'm just excited to be going through the various things. Now, that being said, we are going to be talking about combat scenarios today. And these are probably some of the most boring things that you have to know. So let's go ahead and plow through these as best as we can. This video is probably going to be a little bit more long-winded. I'm going to cover it as easily as I can. We will have it set in chapters so that you guys can go and check rules that you might need to look at, individually. But for the most part, we're just going to go ahead and I'm going to talk to you as if I was talking to a new gamer who is learning how to play in a game that I am running. So, first off, I want you guys to understand that combat is not the prime focus of Vampire the Masquerade or Mind's Eye Theater in general. This is a socio-political game that deals with personal horrors and backstabbings in the halls of political monsters that just live on forever. But every once in a while, things come to blow. So the first thing that we need to discuss is the fact that this is not a hyper-realistic combat simulator. The book specifically says that in those words, and I think it's one of the best ways you could possibly consider it. This is not a hyper-realistic combat simulator. The first thing that we need to know in combat is when you go. That is going to be your initiative. Initiatives are incredibly easy to figure out. They are your composure, which means how calm you are in a situation, and your awareness, how much you know about things that are going on around you. So it is just that simple. Your composure plus your awareness equals your initiative. What happens when two people have the same initiative? It will happen. It definitely will happen. Especially if you have a larger group, you are going to run into a situation where 3, 4, 5, 6 people all have the exact same initiative. At that point, you compare wits. Whoever is the most fast on their feet is going to go first. But what happens if there's another tie? At that point, the book does not have any specified rulings. At that point, what you want to do, because again, this is going to come up, you decide who goes first randomly. You take the people who have the highest initiative, they go first, then it's wits, and if you have any combination of too many people with the exact same wits, what you're going to want to do is play rock, paper, scissors. That's what we're here to do anyway, right? Or roll a die, or flip a coin, or whatever. Whatever makes the most sense in your group to find out who goes first. That's how you figure out initiative. Next are actions. You get 2 actions per turn. You get a simple action and a standard action. A simple action is anything that you can do that doesn't take a test. Walking, running, reloading, standing up after you have been knocked down. These are all options for things that you can do that do not take a test, static or opposed. Then you have your standard action. This is anything that does take a test, static or opposed. Whether or not it's a dexterity check to see whether or not you can jump over a fence properly, or it's a combat test, these are your standard actions. Sometimes your storyteller might say that something that you consider as a simple action is actually a standard action. This can be put in place if there's a lot of confusion going on, because a standard action is said to be whatever you have to put your focus into. So even if you don't have to throw a test, if there's extenuating circumstances such as being shot at, it's raining, you're trying to climb a ladder, there's so many different things that could make things go wrong, your storyteller might consider that a standard action. Now, you can give up your standard action as a second simple action. You can use this as far as it goes for movement, or if you're trying to reload 2 guns, or if you want to stand up and reload. These are all things that you can do. After actions, we need to discuss movement. Movement in these games are incredibly simple. Basically, the way that it works is a simple or standard action can be used for movement 3 steps. These 3 steps equal 3 feet of distance travel. So that whole thing where you're trying to recreate Monty Python's like School of Funny Walks does not apply here. You are moving 1 yard. The end. If you decide to take your standard action and put that towards simple, you can go 2 yards. Good job. But like none of this over-extenuating, I'm trying to step kind of junk. That really should not be a thing. You guys need to have a little bit more respect for yourself on that one. But your storyteller might decide that something that you're doing is, again, being opposed. So your movement might be moved up to a standard action instead of a simple action. But it is that simple. 3 seconds of time, you get 3 feet of distance traveled. Sometimes you will have certain powers that will allow you to have more movement or more advanced movement. And those are going to be covered directly when we get to disciplines. One of the things that I really like about this system is that it fully fills out the situation of fair escape. Any character can choose fair escape, but it does not come to play until the end of the round. If you say, I'm going to use fair escape, you have to survive that round. Now, if somebody says, I'm going to attack that person, your fair escape is effectively void. If you can declare fair escape, but no one says they're attacking you, you've got it. That's basically what it is. If you attempt fair escape, you have to wait to the end of the turn. You raise your hand, you announce, hey, going for fair escape. To successfully fair escape, you have to avoid being involved in any challenge against your dexterity plus your athletics pool during that turn. If you're attacked before your initiative, your fair escape automatically fails, even if the attack misses. That's something that really should be taken into consideration. You need to know that it fails regardless of whether or not it hits you. People are watching you. People have you in their sights. That's why it does not work. However, when you announce that you wish to try for a fair escape, other players who have not acted yet have the opportunity to say that they are going to attack you later in that turn. If no one does attack you in that turn because things happen, such as another player gets involved, or a circumstance popped up that they didn't think of, and they just forget about you, fair escape immediately. Good job, you are out. That is another thing. You are out. If you succeed in a fair escape, you are out of that combat until it is resolved. Due to the fact that combat slows time down effectively, your character is off doing whatever, and by the time they get back, everything's done. And that's just it. You cannot come back expecting the next turn. Once you get fair escape, you are out of said situation. So what are the steps to a combat scene? Step 1, mediation. Rather than using mechanics, the storytellers and the players can sit down to try to come up with some kind of agreement to how things could work. Such as, oh, we don't want to sit here and do this. Let's go ahead and say that this character takes a couple of hits and then is able to escape. If everybody agrees on that, that is 100% fine. Combat is over. Roleplay can resume at a respectful time. Not many people in my games, I think, would take this option, but it is always there. You can sit down and decide how you want the scene to run out instead of actually playing it. This gives players a chance to sit in the storyteller seat for a couple minutes. This does have to have a lot of player cooperation, however, and I can understand why that's hard for people who are on opposite sides of the fence. Step 2. If you cannot mediate, you're going to move down to organization. This is where the storyteller will time freeze. Players need to stop talking at this point in time and pay attention because this concerns you. If you are not in this scene, but you happen to be nearby, do not interact with the characters who are trying to work something out. Do not disrupt anything. Like, this is the time where everybody needs to get put together. At this point, the storyteller needs to figure out what the initiatives of all the characters involved, and also what initiated the combat, because sometimes things will move out of initiative order if somebody of a lower initiative is the person who, engaged in the entire situation originally. After that is figured out, then we have processing the actions. This is when the storyteller will call the initiative score and work their way down from highest to lowest, allowing the people to go through their actions. Standard actions being if there needs to be any rock, paper, scissors challenges thrown, or if anybody has the simple actions where nothing actually is needed to be done other than announcing that the character is doing a thing. Now, there are a couple of things that pop up in combat from time to time that should be covered. First, surprise attacks. Surprise attacks are how you get into a combat scenario. This does not typically happen if something is already going down. Of course, there are going to be specific exceptions to every rule when it comes to this, but basically, if your character is initiating a combat scenario, such as leaping out of the shadows or targeting an unsuspecting character, that action can count as a surprise attack. What happens is the surprise attack will be resolved and then go directly into initiative order. Only the character who initiates a scenario gets the benefit of being able to attack out of the order like that. All other characters have to proceed in normal initiative order unless they have a discipline that changes that order, such as Quicksilver in Celerity. Now, if a character does spend their action, simple or standard, as a surprise attack, they still get that other action, simple or standard, on their remaining action on initiative order. Next is a very interesting situation. The first time I read this, I was like, wow, this is messed up. But I also really enjoy it, which is delaying your action. You can delay an action and take it later on in the turn. Basically saying if you're a 10, you can take it at any other point. Now, the character who is supposed to go on the number that you decide you're going to go on gets to go first. So again, if you're a 10 and a 5 is going to go, the 5's going first, and then you get your other action on that. The thing that I thought was really messed up is you can delay your action completely, basically just taking the time to soak in the situation, to get your character in the mind frame to fight. And in this case, your initiative action for the next turn is increased by 5. So if you go on 10, you now go on 15. Now, you cannot do this over and over and over again, getting more and more initiative. It does not work like that. It only holds once. So after all of that, once every player has had a chance to take their initiative action in order, the turn is completed, and then the storyteller will begin anew, starting at the top of the round and working their way down. So all of that happens in one turn. Everybody goes in 3 seconds. So you can see how time kind of slows down when we're talking about combat scenarios and when turns get involved. So let's get into types of attacks. We need to discuss test pools and how much damage things do. So combat scenarios allow for a number of different types of attack. Now, by default, all characters are going to do 1 point of normal damage, unless you get a critical hit, which we covered in an earlier video. The critical hit will make it so that you do 2 damage. That's why you need to keep an eye on who has how many points, and making sure that even if people relent, you don't just accept the outcome. It's a good idea to go ahead and check them numbers, whether or not you win or tie or lose. Just give them a check, just in case. There are 5 different types of attack that you can do in the Laws of the Night system. Attacking physically or using combat maneuvers unarmed is 1. These are going to be like fighting with your fists, your claws, your teeth. No weapons. No weapon fighting is always going to break down to strength plus brawl. To use an unarmed attack, you must be within 1 step of the target. Attacking physically or using combat maneuvers with a melee weapon of any type uses strength plus melee. To use a melee attack, you must first be within 2 steps of the target. Attacking physically or using combat maneuvers with a firearms or ranged weapon takes dexterity plus marksmanship. Now there is a whole set of rules set aside specifically for marksman challenges, and we will again be going over those in a future video. But these are the basic rules. Then there's attacking physically or using combat maneuvers with a thrown weapon. Those use dexterity plus marksmanship, even for throwing. To make a thrown attack, you must be within 10 steps of your target, and you must be using a weapon that makes sense as a thrown weapon. So things can get a little dicey if you're trying to use something that's not intended to be thrown. The last test pool would be avoiding physical attacks, which are going to be your dexterity plus your athletics. These are going to be when people are swinging something at you, a fist or a lamp or a stake. It really doesn't matter. This is you being able to get physically out of the way. All right, now we've used the words combat maneuvers several times, but what are those? Combat maneuvers are effectively an attack that does not deal damage most of the time. Combat maneuvers are going to be when you're trying to get the outcome without actually causing damage. A good example of that would be disarming your opponent. That can be done with any brawl or melee attack. If you succeed the challenge, you force the target to drop whatever weapon they're holding. Now, that is a single weapon. If they got more than one, it's going to take more than one disarming. Now, picking it up requires a simple action, so you've handicapped a player if they want that weapon. This can also be used to get items off of a character that are not secure, such as if you need to steal a necklace off of somebody, or if you need to like knock their hat off or pick their pocket or something like that. This is the kind of situation where those disarming would come in handy. However, you cannot disarm large anchored items, such as taking away armor or ripping a whole jacket off somebody. That's just not going to fall under the disarming category. We also have the option to grapple an opponent. Grapple has some pretty detailed information. I'm going to tell you exactly what it says in the book here so that you can understand what it does. Grappling your opponent can be done with a brawl or a melee attack. An individual who has been grappled gains the grappled condition. To exit the grappled condition, they must win in an opposed test of strength plus brawl or melee versus strength plus brawl or melee. This test takes a standard action. Now, if you are the grappler, you relinquish your grapple if you take any action targeting someone else other than the character you're grappling. So keep that in mind. Your hands are full if you're holding someone, or if you try to move more than one step with them. If you move one step per turn, you can drag the person who's being grappled with you. If a character who is inflicting the grapple moves or is moved by another person or object more than 2 steps away, they lose the grappled target. It's broken automatically. Another complication to this is if a character is grappled by more than one person, they have to defeat the opponent who has the highest strength plus brawl or melee score, whichever is appropriate. The opponent gets a +1 to their pool for each additional character grappling the character attempting to escape. I know that's a tongue tie, But if you think, it does make sense. If you have 5 people all grabbing onto one person, you only have to do a strength test against one of them. But he gets a bonus for each additional person who's grappling. If the escaping character wins the challenge, they resolve the grapple condition and are no longer grappled by any of the characters. As long as your character is grappled, they are considered the target of a physical challenge each turn for the purpose of fair escape. Here's a fun condition that comes up all the time: knocking out your opponent. This can be done with brawl, melee, or appropriately thrown weapons. If you succeed, your target is unconscious and may not act for themselves for 10 minutes. Not 10 turns, a whole 10 minutes. 1 turn is 3 seconds. So they're effectively knocked out of the combat and are at the mercy of the other players. You can only do this on the first turn of a combat, and you also cannot do it if somebody is expecting the attack. So it's more like you've walked up behind somebody and sapped them or something like that. You can only surprise attack a knockout. That can only be done on the first turn. I know I'm being very repetitive, and I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to get people to understand what that means. Supernatural creatures, such as vampires, werewolves, changelings, cannot be knocked unconscious. As a storyteller, discretion, enhanced human characters, such as hunters and things like that, also cannot be knocked out. But again, that's up to the storyteller and how they want to run things. Knocking your opponent prone can be done with a brawl, melee, or marksmanship-based attack. If you succeed with this maneuver, your opponent suffers the prone condition. Knocking your opponent back can be done with brawl, melee, or marksmanship-based attacks. If you succeed with a knockback maneuver, the opponent takes 3 steps back in the direction of your choosing. Personally, my opinion is the character would be knocked back in the opposite direction from where they're being attacked from, but maybe certain circumstances will take into that. Now here's a big one for vampires. Staking a character. To attempt to stake a character in the heart instead of making a normal attack challenge, you immediately make 3 contested challenges using strength plus melee for a melee weapon, or dexterity plus marksmanship for a ranged weapon against your opponent's dexterity plus athletics. If you succeed in all 3 challenges, your opponent is staked and suffers the following consequences, depending on their creature type. Vampires suffer the helpless condition and take 1 normal damage instead of the damage the attacking character would normally assign. While staked, a vampire cannot move, act, or utilize disciplines. She remains aware of their immediate surroundings and can hear and see everything within their field of vision. If the stake is removed from the heart prior to them falling into torpor, they are healed from the paralysis immediately and resolves the helpless condition. So they just take 1 normal damage from that. That is before falling into torpor. That could take days, depending on how it is, because as a character is staked, they still get rouse checks to see if they wake up. Torpor being the extended sleep, not just the day sleep. Mortals, ghouls, and thin bloods without the vampiric resilience merit. They suffer the weakened condition and 3 aggravated damage because a wooden barb has just pierced their heart. The weakened condition lasts until all damage on the victim is healed, and they have rested for 48 hours. As a human, healing aggravated damage is difficult, and this could very well just be a death sentence for a character like that. Thin Bloods with the Vampiric Resilience merit continue to suffer the staggered condition until the stake is removed, and take 1 aggravated damage instead of the damage the attacking character would normally assign. A couple other things that you should probably know about staking. If you lose any of the challenges, any of those 3 challenges for staking, your attack misses and it does no damage. Also, removing the stake from another character during a combat scene requires a standard action, which means even if it's something that you don't have to throw the test for, it counts as something that you are putting your concentration into and then yanking the stake out. Noticing attacks is what we need to go over next. And you would think that this is something easy, but unfortunately there are situations where this might not be as clear-cut as it turns out. Most physical attacks and any use of physical disciplines are pretty much obvious as long as you are within the eyesight of the person who is doing that. For example, almost every character in the World of Darkness will notice a gunshot or a fireball. And characters with Auspex heightened senses will be able to notice things further away at storyteller discretion due to the fact that those are plot hooks and characters need to be able to have things like that thrown in. Now, successful mental or social challenges are going to be a little bit harder to recognize. For the most part, people are going to do what they're going to do, what they've been ordered to do or manipulated into doing, and you're not going to notice. Now, if you know someone specifically and don't think they would do something that they are doing, in that case, I would say a Wits plus Insight check could be reasonably thrown so you can check. Now, a failed mental or social attack, on the other hand, is something that you could possibly see. If you are in sight or hearing range of a failed mental or social attack, you can choose to throw a Wits plus Awareness versus the Wits plus Subterfuge of the character that failed their mental or social discipline. This would give you a good instance of, oh, they just did a thing. Now, certain disciplines, such as like Protean's Eyes of the Serpent, are obvious because you have glowing eyes. You have glowing golden eyes while you're using that power. So it does take a little bit of common sense when that kind of thing pops up. Mass combat. Mass combat is something that we could probably go over real quick. In mass combat, characters can be attacked by an unlimited number of individuals. And this is a lot different from the older systems, because the older systems used to make it so that you could only be attacked by like 3 people at a time. This is no longer the same situation. Characters can help with a specific mechanic known as the defender action or the assist defender action. You basically, if you are within reach of that character, you can decide to take the brunt. You throw a test against the attacker, and if you lose, they still hit the person that they were attacking. And if you win, you take the damage instead. This is a kind of situation where I don't see this happening very often, but it can be very helpful. To declare an assist defender action, you can offer to block a physical attack targeting another character at any point in the initiative order. If the other character refuses your help, you can use your simple action for another purpose on the initiative turn, and your assist defender action is then just negated. If they don't want your help, you're not helping them. That's basically how that rules out. If your assistance is accepted, you spend your simple action and move up to 3 steps towards the defender, the individual you're defending. If you can get within 1 step of the target, then it is resolved as normal but you are now the target instead. You have decided to just take them out altogether. The attacker may choose to abort the attack if they do not want to attack you instead. That is an option that they have. I'm not sure who would take it, but they basically can go, oh, you're stepping in front, holding back, not doing it. If the user of an assist defender wins the challenge, the attack is negated, preventing any form of effect on you or the original target. When you use an assist defender tactic, both you and the original defender are considered to have been targeted with a physical attack for the purpose of assessing fair escapes. So you're basically not able to use fair escape in that situation. An attack cannot be redirected by assist defender more than once. You can only do this once per turn. If 2 or more characters decide that they're going to use the assist defender maneuver on one person, the individual with the highest initiative gets the first option to do so. Obviously, if you are knocked out or you cannot move, you cannot activate this maneuver. It's just obvious. You can't move, you can't do it. Also, characters who are not solid cannot do this. So if you're in some kind of form, such as a shadow form or in a mist form, you are not going to be able to be a defender in that situation either. Also, characters may not assist defender against an attack that targets multiple characters at the same time. So there's, as you can see, using the assist defender maneuver, there's a lot to take in there, and I hope that makes sense from everything that I put out. Okay, and that's everything that I really have to say about combat scenarios. The next video, I'm going to be going over an optional rule that they have for mass combat. That's more than 10 characters involved in one combat. It's a little bit of a emotionally hitting rule, so I feel like that one should have its own thing. So we were going to be doing that next. With that, I am Voivode Maquette. This is our World of Darkness, and we're going over the core rules system in Laws of the Night so that everybody can, learn a little bit, better, and hopefully this helps people. If you find that this is helping you learn the Mind's Eye Theater system for Laws of the Night, please drop a like. If you think it will help somebody else, please share. And if you have a comment to say on how you think these are run, or if you have different ideas or different interpretation, please put those in the comments below. Other than that, I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Good evening.